There are insults that fade with time. And then there are words that settle somewhere deep inside you, quietly shaping the way you see yourself for years. When my husband looked me straight in the eyes and casually said, "You used to be beautiful. Now, you're just embarrassing," I laughed. Not because it was funny, because after 11 years of marriage, I had forgotten what it felt like to defend myself. I had become so used to shrinking that silence felt easier than pain. What I didn't know was that less than 24 hours later, he would take another woman to his own brother's wedding, and he expected me to stay home. He expected everyone to believe I simply wasn't feeling well. He expected his perfect lie to survive one more day. He had no idea I was already walking toward that wedding, or that by sunset. The woman he called ugly would become the only person everyone could talk about. Some stories begin with revenge. Mine began with exhaustion. Before we continue, if you've ever stayed too long in a relationship because you believed things would eventually change, this story might feel painfully familiar. Sometimes the loudest warning isn't a scream, it's the quiet moment when you stop recognizing yourself. My name is Naomi Carter, and for most of my marriage, people believed I had the perfect life. My husband, Derek Carter, was a successful corporate attorney in Atlanta. He wore expensive tailored suits, drove luxury cars, and had mastered the smile that made strangers trust him within seconds. To everyone else, he was charming. At home, he was precise. Cruel people are often loud. Derek wasn't. His cruelty arrived disguised as observations. "You look tired. That dress doesn't fit you anymore. Maybe don't eat dessert tonight. You know women your age have to work harder." Little comments, tiny cuts, enough to make you question whether you were imagining things. When we first met 12 years earlier, he couldn't stop taking photographs of me. He called me sunshine. He said my laugh made bad days disappear. He wrote handwritten notes and hid them inside my purse. Sometimes I wonder whether that version of him ever truly existed, or whether I simply loved someone he pretended to be. Our daughter Ava was 9. She inherited my curls and Derek's dimples. She also inherited something that frightened me far more. She noticed everything. Children always do? One evening she asked, "Mommy, why do you always apologize to Daddy?" I couldn't answer, because I hadn't realized I did. Saturday mornings used to belong to me. Coffee, music, fresh flowers from the neighborhood market. That tradition disappeared sometime around year 6 of our marriage. Now Saturdays belong to Derek's schedule, his golf, his networking lunches, his clients, his image. The weekend before his younger brother Malcolm's wedding, I stood in our kitchen whisking pancake batter while sunlight poured through oversized windows onto spotless marble countertops. Everything looked perfect. That's the dangerous thing about expensive houses. They hide sadness beautifully. Derek entered wearing athletic clothes worth more than my entire outfit. He opened the refrigerator, paused, looked at the batter. "Pancakes." I smiled. "Ava requested them." He sighed dramatically. "No wonder she's putting on weight." The whisk froze in my hand. Ava was sitting 3 feet away coloring butterflies. She lowered her eyes immediately. I felt something inside me tighten. "She's 9, I said quietly. "So?" He shrugged. "Bad habits start early." Ava pushed her coloring book away. "I'm not hungry anymore." She walked upstairs. Without another word, I stared after her. Then back at Derek. "You shouldn't say things like that." He laughed. "I tell the truth." "No," I replied softly. "You confuse honesty with humiliation." His smile disappeared. For a second. Only a second. Then he picked up his car keys. "You've become emotional lately?" That sentence. He used it whenever he wanted to avoid accountability. I watched him leave. Then I climbed the stairs. Ava was pretending to organize stuffed animals. She always pretended to be busy whenever she cried. I sat beside her. She asked the question every mother dreads. "Am I getting fat?" I wrapped my arms around her before she could see my tears. "No, sweetheart." "Then why did Daddy say that?" "Because your father mistakes control for love. Because broken people often break others. Because I should have protected you sooner." Instead, I kissed her forehead. "Sometimes adults say things they shouldn't." She nodded slowly. "Children accept incomplete answers because they trust. You'll tell them the rest when they're older. Sometimes they never get those answers." The wedding invitation sat on our dining table for weeks. Elegant cream paper, gold lettering, Malcolm and Betrayal. Saturday, 5 o'clock. The Hartwell estate. Malcolm had always been different from Derek. Kinder, warmer. He remembered birthdays. He called their mother every Sunday. He still hugged people without checking who was watching. When Malcolm proposed to Brielle, he cried before she did. Derek teased him for weeks. "You'll never survive marriage acting that emotional." Malcolm only smiled. "I'd rather feel too much than nothing at all." Derek rolled his eyes. Looking back, I think Malcolm understood his brother better than anyone. 3 days before the wedding, I found Derek standing on our balcony smiling at his phone. Not smiling, grinning. The kind of grin people wear when they're being seen exactly the way they want. When he noticed me, he locked the screen immediately. "Who was that?" "Work." "It looked personal." "It isn't." Then he kissed my forehead. Too quickly, without warmth, like completing a task. Suspicion rarely begins as certainty. It starts as tiny moments that don't fit together. New cologne, late meetings, gym sessions lasting 4 hours, phone always face down, suddenly protective passwords. I noticed everything, but after years of being told I was overthinking, I doubted my own instincts. Until Thursday afternoon. I was organizing laundry when his smartwatch vibrated on the dresser. He had forgotten it after charging overnight. The screen lit up. One message, one sentence. "Can't wait to finally be seen with you this weekend." No name, just a heart. I didn't breathe. I simply stared. Then another message. "She'll never compare to me." The room suddenly felt too small. My hands became ice. I wanted to believe there was another explanation. A colleague, a misunderstanding, wrong number, anything. Instead, I sat on the bedroom floor for nearly an hour. Not crying, just empty. There is a strange silence that follows betrayal before grief arrives. It's almost peaceful. Like your mind refuses to process what your heart already knows. That evening, Derek came home carrying roses. Yellow, my favorite. He hadn't bought flowers in almost 3 years. "I've been busy," he said, as though flowers required an explanation. We ate dinner. He complimented the pasta, asked Ava about school, laughed at television commercials. Performed the role of husband perfectly. Watching him was terrifying. How could someone lie so comfortably? Halfway through dinner, he cleared his throat. "About Saturday." I looked up. "The wedding. What about it?" He avoided eye contact. "I think you should stay home." Silence. "Why?" "You've seemed stressed." "I'm fine." "You've also been neglecting yourself." There it was. The familiar criticism wrapped inside fake concern. "I don't understand." He leaned back. "Naomi, let's be honest." His voice remained calm, measured. "You've gained weight." Ava looked between us. Confused, I wished she weren't there. "I don't think Malcolm's wedding is the place for unnecessary attention." I stared. "I don't follow." He sighed. "As your husband, I'm trying to protect you." "Protect me." "You don't exactly fit into most of your formal dresses anymore." Each sentence landed harder than the last. "I can buy another dress." He smiled. Not kindly. "You'd still be wearing it." I couldn't speak. Then came the sentence that would echo in my head for days. "You used to be beautiful." He paused deliberately. "Now, you're just embarrassing." The room became completely silent. Even the television seemed far away. Ava whispered, "Daddy." He stood, collected his plate. As I said, "Stay home." Then he walked upstairs, like he'd discussed grocery shopping. Nothing more. Ava climbed into my lap. She was trembling. "I think you're beautiful." That was the moment I finally cried. Not because of Derek, because our daughter believed she needed to repair damage her father had caused. Friday morning, Malcolm called. "Naomi, are you excited for tomorrow?" I hesitated. "Derek didn't tell you?" "Tell me what?" He said I wasn't coming. Silence. "What?" "He thinks it's better." Another pause. Then Malcolm laughed awkwardly. "That's ridiculous." "I'll talk to him." "No." The word escaped before I thought. "I don't want problems before your wedding." His voice softened. "You know Brielle specifically asked if you'd help her before the ceremony." "I know. We're family." Family. Funny how one word can mean safety to one person and obligation to another. "I'll see what happens." After hanging up, I looked around our bedroom. My dresses hung neatly inside the closet. Rows of colors, each one connected to memories, anniversaries, birthdays, charity galas, vacations. I tried one after another. Some were snug, some still fit perfectly. But every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see fabric. I heard Derek's voice. "You're embarrassing." Isn't it frightening how one person's opinion can become the mirror you use? At noon, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Attached was one photograph. Just one. Derek, standing outside an upscale restaurant, holding hands with a younger woman in a deep burgundy dress, both smiling. Below it, one message: "You deserve the truth before tomorrow." No signature, no explanation. Nothing else. I enlarged the image. He wasn't simply having lunch. He was looking at her, the way he'd once looked at me. Like she was the only person in the world. My stomach twisted. I waited for anger. Instead, I felt relief. Relief that I wasn't imagining things anymore. Relief that the endless self-doubt finally had an answer. Sometimes certainty hurts less than confusion. Around 6 that evening, Derek returned home unusually cheerful. He whistled while loosening his tie. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" I asked. He nodded. "I'm leaving around noon." Without me. He shrugged. "We already discussed that." Then he glanced at me. "I appreciate you being mature." Mature, as though accepting humiliation was wisdom. He disappeared into the shower. Minutes later, his phone rang on the kitchen counter. The screen flashed only one word: "Angel." It stopped, then immediately rang again. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because now I already knew. That night I barely slept. At 3 a.m, I walked into Ava's room. She was curled beneath a lavender blanket, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Children somehow managed to look completely safe while sleeping. I whispered a promise she couldn't hear. "I won't let this become your definition of love." I didn't know how. I only knew something had to change. Morning arrived with gray skies threatening rain. Derek left wearing an immaculate charcoal suit. He adjusted his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. "You'll be okay?" I simply nodded. He smiled politely. "I'll bring you cake." Then he walked out. 5 minutes later, I heard another car stop outside. Curiosity pulled me toward the upstairs window. A sleek black luxury sedan waited at the curb. The passenger door opened. A young woman stepped out wearing a breathtaking magenta designer gown. She laughed as Derek kissed her cheek before opening her door like a gentleman. He looked around once, confident no one was watching. Then they drove away together. My knees nearly gave out. He hadn't merely asked me to stay home. He had replaced me. For his own brother's wedding, and somewhere inside that moving car, he believed the story was already over. He had no idea that at that exact moment, someone else was knocking on my front door. When I opened it, the last person I expected to see was standing there, holding a garment bag in one hand and a quiet determination in her eyes. She spoke only 6 words. "Naomi, we're going to that wedding." For a moment, I simply stared. Standing on my porch was Brielle's mother, Evelyn. She wasn't the type of woman who wasted words. Even at 62, she carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind earned through surviving hardships, instead of talking about them. In one hand, she held a long black garment bag. In the other was a small white envelope. "I don't have much time," she said. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She looked around my living room before placing the garment bag gently across the sofa. "I know what Derek did." Those words knocked the air out of me. "How?" She sighed. "Because Malcolm knows." My eyes widened. "He knows?" "He found out last night." I shook my head. "Then why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because Malcolm wanted proof before confronting his brother on his wedding day." She paused. "But things changed this morning." Evelyn handed me the envelope. Inside were several printed photographs. Each showed Derek and the same young woman over the previous 2 months. Restaurants, hotels, luxury boutiques. One photo showed them embracing outside a downtown apartment building. The dates were clearly visible. My hands trembled. "So, everyone knows?" "No, only a few of us. Malcolm, my husband, myself, and now you." I swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" Evelyn looked directly into my eyes. "That depends on you." Silence filled the room. Then she unzipped the garment bag. Inside hung an elegant emerald green evening gown. Simple, sophisticated, timeless. I bought this for another occasion years ago. She smiled gently. "It deserves to be worn today." I stared at the dress. "I can't." "You can." "I don't even look." She raised a finger before I could finish. "Don't." "What?" "Repeat his words." I looked down. She stepped closer. "For years, Derek has been deciding who you are. Today, you decide." An hour later, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The gown fit as though it had been tailored specifically for me. My curls had been softly pinned back by Evelyn's longtime stylist. Light makeup highlighted features I hadn't appreciated in years. I wasn't transformed into someone new. I simply looked like the woman I had forgotten. When Ava came downstairs, she stopped halfway. "Mom," I smiled nervously. "What?" She ran into my arms. "You look like the princess in my bedtime stories." I laughed through tears. "No, I look like your mother. And that's enough." She hugged me tighter. I knew Daddy was wrong. Those words strengthened something inside me. Not anger, resolve. The drive to Hartwell Estate felt strangely peaceful. Rain clouds had disappeared. Golden afternoon sunlight washed across the white stone mansion where hundreds of guests were already arriving. Luxury cars lined the entrance. String musicians performed beneath blooming gardens. Everything looked perfect. Except one thing. Near the entrance stood Derek, laughing. His arm rested comfortably around the waist of the woman in the burgundy gown. She wore confidence like expensive perfume. Guests assumed she belonged there. Some probably believed she was his wife. Others looked confused but chose politeness over questions. Derek had counted on that. He always counted on appearances. Then our car stopped. A valet opened my door. Conversation slowed. One by one, heads turned. I stepped onto the stone pathway. Not rushing, not hiding, simply walking. The emerald gown caught the afternoon light as a gentle breeze lifted the fabric behind me. Ava held my hand. Evelyn walked beside us. Across the courtyard, Derek froze. His smile disappeared. The champagne glass slipped slightly in his hand. The woman beside him frowned. "Who is that?" He didn't answer, because he couldn't. Malcolm, standing near the ceremony entrance, looked toward us. His expression shifted from concern to relief. The guests began whispering. "Isn't that Derek's wife?" "I thought she wasn't coming." Then who was the other woman? For the first time in years, Derek wasn't controlling the story. He was watching it unravel. Derek's expression collapsed the moment our eyes met. He looked as though someone had erased every carefully rehearsed excuse from his mind. His mistress followed his gaze before turning toward me. Her confident smile faded into confusion. "Who's that?" she whispered. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because there wasn't a lie in the world that could explain why his wife, the woman he'd insisted stay home, was now walking toward him with quiet confidence. Every conversation in the courtyard slowed. Even the string quartet seemed to lose its rhythm for a brief moment. I didn't rush. I didn't glare. I simply kept walking with Ava beside me. There is a different kind of strength that comes when you've stopped trying to convince people of your worth. Derek stepped forward. "Naomi," his voice was barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I smiled politely. "I'm attending your brother's wedding." "I told you." "You told me I was embarrassing." Several nearby guests exchanged uneasy glances. He lowered his voice. "This isn't the place." I looked around at the beautiful estate. "No? You seemed perfectly comfortable bringing another woman here." The woman beside him finally spoke. "Derek." She looked between us. "Who is she?" Silence. He hesitated. "Just long enough," I answered for him. "I'm Naomi Carter." I extended my hand. His wife. The color drained from her face. "A wife?" She looked back at Derek. "You told me your divorce was almost finalized." His eyes widened. "I can explain." She took a step backward. "No, you need to explain to both of us." The whispers grew louder. "What did she say? He's still married?" I thought that was his wife. Within seconds, people throughout the courtyard were turning toward us. Exactly the attention Derek had spent his entire life trying to control. Malcolm approached quickly. "Brielle, take Ava inside." Brielle immediately knelt beside my daughter. "Sweetheart, would you help me with something?" Ava looked at me. I nodded. She squeezed my hand before following Brielle into the house. I silently thanked them. Some moments should never belong to children. Malcolm stopped in front of his older brother. His tuxedo was immaculate. His expression wasn't. "I gave you one chance last night." Derek swallowed. "I wasn't going to—" "Don't." Malcolm's voice remained calm. "I asked you one question. Is there another woman?" You looked me in the eyes and said no. Derek looked down. Our mother-in-law, Patricia, arrived moments later. "What is happening?" Nobody answered immediately. The mistress quietly removed her hand from Derek's arm. She suddenly looked less like an accomplice, and more like someone realizing she'd been manipulated. She turned toward me. She struggled to speak. I'm so sorry. You didn't know? She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. He said you'd been separated for almost a year. He told me you refused to sign the papers. I believed her, not because she was crying, because her confusion looked genuine. Derek hadn't betrayed one woman. He'd lied to two. Patricia slowly turned toward her oldest son. Tell me she's lying. He rubbed his forehead. Mom, tell me. I didn't want today ruined. Malcolm laughed bitterly. You ruined it weeks ago. No, you ruined it the moment you decided your family deserved lies. Guests continued pretending not to watch. None of them succeeded. The wedding coordinator quietly began guiding people toward the ceremony lawn, hoping to create some distance. Instead, more people drifted closer. Human curiosity is difficult to resist. Derek finally looked at me. I made mistakes. Mistakes? I repeated softly. You called me ugly. You told me to stay home. You brought another woman to your brother's wedding. He opened his hands. I wasn't thinking. I almost laughed. No, you were thinking. You planned every detail. You simply didn't plan for me to arrive. Those words landed harder than shouting ever could. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing clever to say. The mistress removed a delicate silver bracelet from her wrist. I bought this because he said we'd celebrate tonight. She looked at Derek with quiet disappointment. I don't know who you really are. She placed the bracelet into his hand. Then she turned toward me once more. I truly am sorry. Without another word, she walked away. Nobody tried to stop her. Patricia closed her eyes for several seconds. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. I raised you better than this. Derek reached toward her. Mom, she stepped back. Not today. Malcolm placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. I love you. I always will. But after today, trust will have to be earned. He looked at me. Naomi, I'm sorry. I shook my head. You have nothing to apologize for. He smiled sadly. I hope one day you'll still consider yourself part of this family. Before I could answer, Brielle appeared at the entrance. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. She looked at me. I would really like you there. I blinked. After everything? She nodded. Especially after everything. She reached for my hand. You've spent years standing in the background. Today, sit with us. Tears blurred my vision. Not because Derek had finally been exposed. Because someone had finally chosen me. The ceremony was beautiful. Malcolm and Brielle exchanged vows beneath white roses as the evening sun painted the sky gold. Halfway through the ceremony, I noticed Derek sitting alone in the last row. No one had asked him to leave, but no one had invited him closer either. Sometimes loneliness isn't punishment. It's simply the natural consequence of broken trust. Weeks later, I filed for divorce. This time, Derek didn't argue. Counseling had been offered. Apologies had been made, but some words leave scars that love alone cannot erase. I found work again, something I'd quietly given up years earlier to support Derek's career. Ava watched me rebuild our lives one decision at a time. Months later, she asked me a question while we were baking pancakes. Mom? Yes? Why didn't you yell at Daddy that day? I smiled. Because I didn't need to. When someone already knows they've done wrong, shouting rarely changes anything. What changes people are consequences. She nodded thoughtfully before pouring chocolate chips into the batter. A year later, Malcolm and Brielle celebrated their first anniversary. Their living room was filled with laughter. Ava ran through the backyard with their new puppy. As I watched her, I realized something. The greatest revenge had never been embarrassing Derek in public. It had been refusing to let his opinion become my identity. For years, I'd believed the cruel version of myself he described. But mirrors can lie when someone else is holding them. Sometimes the hardest journey isn't leaving a marriage. It's finding the person you were before. Someone convinced you that you weren't enough. If this story leaves you with one thought, let it be this. The people who truly love you don't make you feel smaller, so they can feel bigger. Real love doesn't erase your confidence, it protects it. And the day you stop believing someone else's cruel version of you is often the day your real life begins.